Welcome to our class on the book of Revelation. I'm just kidding, that's not Revelation. Spiritual warfare, that's what we're talking about. So I want to kind of use tonight as an intro for everybody. I guess I'll just put that right there, I don't know. Kind of want to use tonight as an intro for everybody to kind of get our feet wet with our topic, because we're going to be spending a considerable amount of time here. Most of these spiritual formation classes have been, I think the longest one that we've done so far was 12 weeks. Shortest one we did was about 4 or 5 weeks. This one right here, we've got 16 weeks planned, and depending on how a couple of those weeks go, we might stretch that out to 20. We got a couple of guests that are coming, and I'll tell you why we have some guests that are coming before too long. Dr. Folden's going to be leading some of these sessions. We're giving him all the tough ones because he's a doctor. So there you go. He has. This is his thing. But for us, well, I guess there's a couple things I want to address up at the start. I want to kind of share with you just like my journey so far. So most of the time when we meet in here on a Wednesday night, we're talking about spiritual formation, the idea of the innermost part of our being, our heart, being transformed into something that looks a whole lot more like Jesus and a whole lot less like me. And that is a lifelong process. It's something that we're going to experience major highs. There's something, times that we'll experience major lows. But there's certain things that are associated with spiritual formation that we have to do. And that's one of the things for us as Baptists oftentimes, not historically speaking, but in recent history, I would say, that's something that has become very, very uncomfortable. The idea of us doing anything to contribute to this relationship that we have with Jesus Christ. And the thing that is always the same for us is that Jesus did the work of what we call justification on the cross 2,000 years ago. But as we move from that and into that next stage of our formation, which is the process of sanctification, it is pretty much agreed on by most people. There's only going to be a few holdouts, so to speak, that would just be like, no, I'm going to push back on that. But for the most part, and certainly for the entirety of church history, you see the overwhelming majority affirm this, that there are things that we have to do. If we want to experience more joy, more peace, more hope, more all the fruits of the Spirit, there are certain things that we have to do in concert with the Holy Spirit. And so 2 years ago, it was almost 2 years ago, so I guess not quite. And I've been telling this story, and I don't tell it just like a ton. I have shared it with those of you who took our formation class, so forgive me if this is a repeat, but I have been thinking that it was like 3 years ago, but it's just the last 2 years have been that crazy that it just feels like it's been a lot longer. But about 2 years ago, I went on kind of like a spiritual formation retreat. Felt like God was calling me away to just kind of get by myself to kind of work some things out that I was trying to discern His will in some areas. And so Courtney got me a trip booked in Colorado in this mountain cabin by myself for a week. And I had no idea, like even up until like the day going to it, I had no idea what I was going to be doing up there. And so like literally the day of, I just grabbed like 3 or 4 books off my shelf that I was like, those would be interesting. And I kind of had like a little bit of an outline, but not too much. Reached out to some guys to pray for me, and then set off to Colorado, got up in the mountains, and it was real snowy while I was there. And so it was me and Jesus, and that's about it. There were some elk. That was cool. But other than me and Jesus and the elk, that was about it. And one thing happened to me. And I'm going to say it happened to me because I still can't quite wrap my mind around it. One of the things that I think is a good teaching tool is that we can show off our scars, but we don't necessarily show off our wounds necessarily yet. Our wounds take time to heal, and we don't want to go and be like, hey, look at my wounds, everybody, in these large public settings. But I think after we kind of work through those and those things start to heal and they start to kind of scar over, you can kind of show them off a little bit more then. And so for me, something happened like as soon as I got into this cabin. All right, so I'm flying to Colorado, the best plane trip. I don't know if you know me, but I am terrified of flying. And for some reason, I just had a lot of peace on this particular flight. Didn't hyperventilate one time. Didn't punch anybody next to me. It was just a nice, peaceful trip. I get to the airport. Everything's nice and peaceful. I'm like, all right, this is good. And so I get there. And right before I took this trip to Colorado, I had been exposed so briefly to the concept of spiritual warfare. And prior to that, and I'll actually kind of get into this story later on, but prior to that, my only other experience really with spiritual warfare was like my freshman year in college for like my first semester there. I had a roommate who was possessed by a demon. And so we'll get to that story sooner or later. But I just still didn't even have like the framework to like understand all that stuff. I just knew, I was like, man, I don't like being in a room with this guy at nighttime. Like that's all that I really like understood about that particular experience. And so, but you know, fast forward a long time, and then you got me going to this trip, and I had been exposed to a little bit of teaching about spiritual warfare. And then, so I get to the cabin, I walk in the door, and I just start praying, God, you know, just some things that, like, I didn't even know what I was praying. My concept for spiritual warfare at that time was so limited. And so I was just like, God, like, you know, I just pray that you would kind of consecrate this place, you know, that this would just be a time for me and you to connect and so on and so forth. And then I walk up some steps to get to like the main area of the cabin, and like I still to this day, I don't know, I can't explain fully what happened, but every oppressive thought I could possibly have come into my mind, it just hit me all at once. And next thing I know, like I'm down on my knees and I'm just like, my life is over. Like I'm telling you, for the 10 hours leading up to that, everything is fine and dandy, lots of peace, lots of joy, lots of hope. And then just like out of nowhere, something hits and I'm just like man, my life is over. Like every sin I ever committed, some sins that I hadn't even committed. Like I was just like going through my mind like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And then just like it came, I started praying, and very quickly in the same fashion that it came, like it just kind of left. And I just like got up off the ground. I was like, that was weird. And so I went and I sat down and I was like, well, I wonder what I'm going to do with the rest of the week. And so that put me on a journey of trying to do a lot of things. Spiritual formation got put into the forefront of my mind, and it's kind of been an obsession ever since. But also the work of spiritual warfare got kind of put in front of me that particular week. And while it hasn't been the obsession that spiritual formation has, I have been able to see where the two things intersect very clearly. And so I'm going to kind of just put all my cards on the table here. We have some experts that are coming in on a couple of these sessions because when Dr. Folden and I both met to kind of outline this series, we looked at some of the topics that we felt like needed to be discussed. And I was like, well, you got this because I don't. He's like, no, you got this because I don't. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to find somebody who can talk about this. And sure enough, we found somebody that we think is going to be really helpful. And so the reason that I feel comfortable enough bringing some instruction to this particular setting is not because I think that I'm some spiritual warfare master, expert, guru, or whatever the case may be. I don't believe that at all. I do think I'm probably like 2 or 3 steps ahead than most of the folks in our church, just from some educational experience, just from experience, and some things that have happened in the last 2 years. But, you know, I'm not sitting here trying to say, like, hey, I've got all the answers. And so this is going to be very much an introductory into the concept of spiritual warfare. And there might be some of you in here that have had a lot of experience with it that you might be able to contribute to the conversation as well, too. And if that's you, I would love that. I would love that kind of feedback and things. So when we have time to answer or ask questions and stuff like that, feel free to come at me with anything. If you've never been in one of these settings before, this is a very free-flowing conversation. This is not like a Sunday morning service. I don't want to be the one preaching over you. So if you want to raise your hand at any point in time, stop and be, hey, you just said something kind of crazy. Let's talk about it. No, that's fine. Let's talk about it. You can push back on anything that you hear. You can argue with anything that you hear. I love to argue. But like not in like a evil way. Maybe it's evil. Who knows? I don't think it's evil, but I like argue. I think that like we can build each other up just by having dialogues where we disagree with each other, where you try to poke holes in something I'm saying and I can come back and defend it. I think that that's how people grow and learn. And certainly that's been the educational method for the vast majority of human history until very recently. And so that's kind of been my personal experience with it. So again, I'm not trying to proclaim to be an expert, not trying to proclaim to have all the answers, but I do think I feel comfortable and not arrogant saying that I'm probably about 2 or 3 steps ahead than most of the folks in our church on this particular topic, because we find ourselves, as Southern Baptists in particular, lots of good qualities about Southern Baptists, all right? But we also have our bad qualities too. Just how you have lots of that was embarrassing. Just how you have lots of great qualities about your like family, for instance. We can also look at your family, and you can look at my family. It ain't perfect. Like we've got things. What was that? Is that? Man, easy there. Easy there, big fella. So anyways, yeah, like just how, you would say like, yeah, man, I love my family. There's all sorts of great things about it. We'd also say that, man, there's some negative things too. And one of the things about us as Southern Baptists is that we tend to fall into one of the three traps when it comes to talking about spiritual warfare. And I want to talk about those three traps right now. So our first trap is C.S. Lewis had a great quote. Has anybody ever read the Screwtape Letters? Okay, so we got a few. Really, really good. That's going to be on one of our selected reading lists. So if you don't have to read the books that are on the recommended reading list, but I put about 5 or 6 books on there that are all like kind of entry level, except for one. One of them is complicated, but I'll explain that here in just a little bit. But if you would like to pick up any one of these books, you will have plenty of time over the next 15, 16 weeks to finish it and probably feel pretty good about it. You might even pick up another one. But in the Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis opens up the book with this line right here before he kind of gets into the dialogue between Wormwood and Screwtape. He says, there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors. All right, now I want to throw in a third one because I think it's something that I have actually seen and experienced here at Central Baptist Church. But let's talk about this first group right here, and we are going to affectionately call them the demon hunters, okay? In evangelical Christianity, you will have certain denominations that put spiritual warfare at the forefront of their spiritual formation, all right? They will put spiritual warfare at the forefront. It's there, when you walk in the room, this is what we're about. Like we're about that spiritual warfare life. And they put it as like the kind of the end all be all, that central area of their spiritual formation. And I don't want to like necessarily call out like any denomination in particular. You see it all over the place. I think that you see some Baptist denominations that become the demon hunters. You see some Pentecostal. The Pentecostals always get the bad end of the stick here is like them dang Pentecostals and stuff like that. But it's like, man, they bring a lot of really good stuff to the table. And I do think that you're seeing a shift right now in Pentecostalism from some of this behavior to more of like a centrist view, which I think is very positive. So I don't want to just like pick on them because, at some points in their history, that's kind of been the traditional area that somebody can look to for this particular error. But I mean, you see it all over the place. Non-denominational churches are becoming a lot more demon hunter-ish. And what do I mean by that? I just mean that you're looking for that demon under every rock. The weather outside is bad. That dang demon, I curse you, demon of bad weather, or whatever. It's like anything that's happening to us negatively, there is some demon that is trying to steal my joy. And because there's this negative thing that's happening, it's got to be an actual spiritual, rational being that we know today as demons, and that's what's causing it. And so everything becomes a demon. Everything becomes a demon, and that is a problem. As C.S. Lewis pointed out, the devil would love for you to focus solely on him and become a demon hunter, because the problem with becoming a demon hunter is that more than likely we will lose sight of the God that actually, like where we actually have like our victory. And so I think that that's one of the things that, I think we can ask ourselves, okay, well, why do these people exist? Like, why is it that this is one of the errors, and why do we see this kind of cropping up in evangelical Christianity? And I think it just kind of boils down to our nature. Why is it that politics are such a hot topic today? Well, if you identify as Republican, you now have your people and you have an enemy. If you identify as a Democrat, you now have your people and you have an enemy. We like being in conflict. Not everybody, but I think people in general, there's a certain joy that comes out of conflict, because it's like, okay, when there's conflict, I know I have my people, I have my team, the people that I am battling the conflict with, and then I have the people that I'm battling against. And so it like kind of gives us purpose. And people without purpose are wretched creatures, right? Like we need purpose. And so when we can't find purpose, we become hammers in search of a nail and go and look for that conflict. And so I think that that's one reason why this particular error, where we just start getting obsessed with the demonic, becomes something really prevalent for us. The other group of people I will affectionately call the head in the sand folks. And this is where we as Southern Baptists most often fit. Most often fit. And what I mean by head in the sand, it's like, okay, I hear all this stuff about demons. I don't care, you know, and I'm just like, I'm stuck in the sand. I don't hear you. I don't see you. I'm not thinking about you. And I think that there's one of two reasons for this particular error. And there might be tons of other reasons too, by the way. So, you know, don't get stuck just on these two things. But I think that there's two predominant reasons in my opinion. Number one, I think there's some fear associated with this particular one right here. I think that as we read Scripture, you know, if anybody has spent any, you know, real time, like for example in the New Testament, or even like in the Old Testament, there's some crazy stuff in Daniel we're going to be looking at in a couple of weeks when we start talking about angels. Yeah, that gets nuts. But like when you look at the New Testament, you see some guys, the sons of, who was it? The sons of Siva? Is that right? Anybody want to check me on that? Do what? Is that right? Okay, I mean, I'm not confident in that, but you know, so anybody, if anybody comes at me with confidence, I will acquiesce. That's how my level of confidence right now. But you have these guys, these sons, I think of Siva, they kind of go forward and they're trying to cast out this demon, and all of a sudden this demon looks at him and is like, well, I know Paul and I know Jesus, but I don't know you, and he like whoops them. And so like when we read that, we realize like, man, these are some scary forces that we're dealing with here. This isn't just something to like play around with, and it's kind of scary. And the more fearful we get, one of those mechanisms that we have for ourselves when we become afraid of something is to run, the flight mechanism. If you were in our forgiveness series, you remember those 3 ways we defend ourselves. And so one of the ways that we defend ourselves is the flight mechanism. And we also have the freeze mechanism where maybe we don't run from it, but we just disassociate ourselves from it. And as a result of that, we just stick our head in the sand and we're like, we're going to pretend like this doesn't exist. I think that there is a lot of people at Central Baptist Church that fall in this category with fear. Fear becomes their motivation for just rejecting all things that might, you know, deal with the spiritual warfare. But then you have the other group, and this is a group that like I can appreciate because I used to fall in this group. I have since I've shifted pretty heavily away from this group, but I have sympathy and empathy there because I used to be a part of this group, and that's because you have a theological conviction to where you look at somebody who might consider spiritual warfare as something that is real and something that we need to be engaging with. We need to be engaging in the battle. And there's this theological thing in you where it's just like, I'm a Christian, demons can't do anything to me. I have this theological conviction that like those people over there, they're a little bit crazy. They haven't read the Bible the way I have. And as a result of that, I have this theological conviction. I'm just going to stick my head in the sand. I'm going to pretend like those people don't exist. And when I do pretend like they exist, I'm probably going to be a little bit demeaning towards them. And I think that that's like a real thing, that we've got to acknowledge that there are some people in our church that have these biblical reasons for saying, yeah, I don't need to worry about spiritual warfare. That's just not something that is going to be in my life. And so why even care about it? But then you have like this third group of people. So we kind of addressed the 2 groups that C.S. Lewis addressed there. But then you have the dude about to get killed. All right, so like every movie, every war movie has that dude that you just know, like, he's going to be dying very soon. You know, most of the time it's not a main character, but sometimes it is just for the shock value. But most of the time it's like some like side character that you can just tell, like by the way they pick up their gun or their sword or their spear or their bow. They're just like, so long, sweet shoulder. You're going. You're not going to make it. We're going to be burying you by the end of this film. And that person knows that there's a battle, right? Like they're in the middle. Like they're not the person with their head in the sand. They're engaging in the fight. They're not the person obsessed with the fight. They probably don't even want to be there. But the problem is they have no idea what they're doing. And because they have no idea what they're doing, they might be getting beat up and maybe not even realizing it sometimes, you know? Like they're the dude in the film who's about to get killed and they just don't even, everybody that's watching knows it, but they don't get it yet. And those are like those 3 categories of errors that I think that we find ourselves in quite often, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a time of vulnerability. If you have been in any of our spiritual formation classes, you know that vulnerability is the worst, but it's good. So if you feel like you fall currently in the demon hunting category, when I say go, you're going to come sit over here, all right? If you feel like you are head in the sand person, you are going to go stand or sit over here. If you feel like you are the dude about to get killed, you're going to stand in the middle. If you feel like, you know what, I think I'm pretty balanced here. Like I feel pretty good about this, you can go stand in the corner. All right? Everybody got it? All right. So, demon hunters, head in the sand folks, dude about to get killed, everybody feeling pretty good about themselves, go. We'll get you back to where you are so that way you don't feel separated from your spouse in case y'all, go somewhere else or whatever.
I know why you're over there. You're over there for those podcasts.
It says head in the sand.
Head in the sand is over there.
Not the demon.
Demon hunter's right here. Dude about to get killed's right here. Head in the sand guy's over here. Dude feeling pretty good.
I do feel kind of good.
Okay, well good. Good. I think that's possible. I feel like you can feel pretty good about this.
That probably means I'm going to get killed.
You said, hold on. Repeat that for everybody to hear. You
I
said,
don't know if I'm going to get killed or if I'm okay, which probably means I'm going to get killed.
good self-awareness there. I like that. All right, so y'all feeling pretty good.
Probably my background.
Demon hunter by yourself. Okay. You're being judged right now. No, just kidding. All right, we got our dude about to get killed. It's all right. And then we got our folks with the head in the sand. All right, demon hunter. All right, here we go. What do you feel about our people on the opposite side of the room?
Okay, what is the opposite side again?
The head in the sand people. Go ahead, tell us, Kim. They like the beach. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, if we believe God is divine, and the Bible talks about this, obviously Lucifer being a fallen angel, then there is just as much to believe that there's demons all around us.
Okay. Okay.
Trying to.
So you're taking the political approach. I asked you, what do you think about these folks? And you're just like, hey, that's cool. No.
I don't like them.
That's Kim. That's cool. I was hoping we'd get a little bit more aggressive, but that's all right. Head in the sand, folks. What do you think about Kim? the solo.
Man, she's tough.
She's tough. That's what you think. Folks that are about to get killed. What do you feel about the people to either side of you?
They're about to be killed.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. We're gonna come back to that in a second. Our folks that are feeling pretty good about everything, feel like there's balance, feel like you got, some education built up and things like that. How do y'all feel about it? How do y'all feel about the rest of the room?
To me, I feel like you should acknowledge that there are demons out there because, like Kim was saying, when Lucifer was thrown, he was taking a third of the angels with him. So then, I always think there's two on our side and one against us. So if we're, if there's 2/3 of the angels that are still with God, but it's real, and we need to know enough about it to know something.
Yeah.
To fight if we do have to fight it, but not to obsess about it.
Okay.
I think everything's
Let me come back to my solo demon hunter here. How long do you feel like you've been in that category, that you would describe yourself that way?
Probably since I was young.
Okay.
I think it has to do a lot with my upbringing.
Tell everybody your upbringing real quick, like your church upbringing.
My dad was a Baptist pastor, but they were very charismatic, and there wasn't any prayer that didn't involve what is it called, praying against the work of the devil or the
Yeah.
literally every sentence in that prayer probably involved that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just very common and very I was very exposed to always knowing that there's demons all around us.
But where did you grow up?
I'm sorry?
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up here in Jacksonville, moved around a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was still always in Texas.
Yeah. Good. Folks that feel like you've had your head in the sand, how long have y'all feel like y'all been in this category? Most of your life? Okay. Dylan, what church did you grow up in? Oh. What about you guys kind of in the middle? How long, would you say that you've always been in this category? Or would you say that at one point in time you were here, one point in time you were there? or you've always just kind of been curious? What would y'all say?
Probably, yeah, probably there a lot.
Okay.
As I've gotten older, I guess I've seen and heard of things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I know it's real.
Yeah.
Not so much that I don't obsess about it, but
Yeah.
I know it's there.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right.
a good child, but I'm not confident in my
No.
abilities.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. I mean, I'm kind of there with you. I mean, it is like this is a hard thing to consider, for sure. Yeah,
Would
go
you
ahead.
say Demon Hunter is an obsession? Like, you know, like, for example, like, my parents didn't allow me to watch scary movies because they always said it's going to open the door to the devil, right?
Yeah.
And I believed it for a really long time, and then, like, you know, went through high school and started watching a lot of scary movies.
Yeah.
A lot of exorcisms. And now, as an adult who has kids, like, I'm very sensitive to that again, where
Yeah.
it's like, there's no way that I want to expose my mind to that.
Yeah.
Or for my kids to ever go through that either.
Yeah. So what's the question? I feel like there was a question, but there might not have been. Are we just kind of making?
Is that,
were you-
yeah, is that obsessive?
I don't know.
No, I would say no, because I believe the same thing. I won't let my kids watch scary movies.
Yeah.
I don't watch them because then I have nightmares.
Yeah.
Then I feel like that is opening the door for that kind of stuff in your mind.
Yeah. Did anybody ever see the Amityville Horror when it like came out? You know, the newer one. That was the last scary movie that I watched. I was dumb. I was done. I was like, man, I'm out. I'm done. Man, I was done after that. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back home and I'm gonna watch PG movies from here on out. Amityville Horror. That was the last like true horror movie I remember. Like, oh no, I did watch one other after that with Courtney, and I couldn't stand her for that. That was what was that? There was a movie. Anyway, I can't even remember what it was called now. Anyways, how long have y'all feel like y'all been in that stage?
I'd say for me personally, a long time.
Okay.
Just because it comes from, that's what when you asked about them over there.
Yeah.
I feel like the reason why I'm over here, it comes from experience and exposure.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, 'cause being exposed to it early on. And I don't know, I feel like I'm over here just because, like, as a kid, I can still remember to this day, I was young, like Liam's age, and I remember just having the craziest, most like vivid dreams. Like I can still recall all kinds of details.
Yeah.
And even like now to these days, like every now and again, I just have like these crazy dreams, and I just wake up, like I jump up from bed just soaking wet,
Yeah.
like just from sweat, and then I cannot go to sleep unless I pray for at least a solid, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And then even like whenever I do watch scary movies, whatever I watch, like I see at night, and so man, I feel like it's definitely real. And
Man, I'm gonna mess with you, dude. If you ever watch a scary movie, you better believe.
Just pray.
Yeah.
That's healed all of those issues.
Well, good. Lauren, Kim, y'all got anything y'all want to add?
I mean, probably like the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Just reading some books about
Yeah.
it, listening to different people talk about it.
Yeah.
You talk about it more. So just like more recently.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I mean, when it became more, I guess, brought to my attention was when I was early married and just had a baby.
Yeah.
That series of books called This Present Darkness.
Oh yeah. Frank Peretti.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I know it's fiction.
Yeah.
However,
He works some
just-
theology in there.
but yes,
Yeah.
but it just made me aware that, you know, I was the person that had my head in the sand, thinking it didn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, I could believe in a God that would protect me, but I didn't want to believe that there was something out there
Yeah.
willing to attack
A
me.
malicious spiritual force that
Yes.
was against you. Yeah.
Yes.
That is a thing. So anyway, y'all go ahead and y'all get back to where y'all were sitting. I don't want to divide the room anymore, but just y'all take a mental note of this so that way y'all can, you know, judge. Do what did you say? Yeah, that's right. There you go. There you go. So today, we're going to move pretty quickly because I want to encourage you all, regardless of where you are. all right, regardless of where you are, I want to encourage you to get into the fight. I want to encourage you to get into the fight because there is a spiritual war that is happening. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time working that out theologically. What does that mean? What does the Bible have to say about this? How does this get worked out in our practical everyday life and all those good things like that? But the thing that we all have to agree on at the end of the day is regardless of where we fall in the room right now, there's a battle. There's a battle. I want to just look at like two passages. These aren't the only two passages. But Ephesians 6:10-12 says, finally, it's actually a few verses here. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Also, just two things from these three verses right here. Number one, who is our advocate? Who is our power? Who is our victory? It's God. All right? Congratulations. We all passed first grade Sunday school. Give yourself a pat on the clap. I don't get... Do whatever you would like to do. So, that is like the thing, right? I think that, were you snapping for yourself? That a boy? You know what? That just became a thing. We're just going to snap now. All right. That is something that, and by the way, just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up, and I'll explain it a little bit more here in just a second. In the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about things that if you grew up in Sunday school, you probably learned. But you may not have allowed it to get from here to here, so to speak. You may not have allowed it to saturate to that innermost part of who you are to where you believe it with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so when we say that God is our victory, 9 times out of 10 for me hearing that, probably 10 times out of 10 for me hearing that growing up, coming from Southern Baptist churches and things like that. Again, we have great things, but we also have some negative things that we got to work on. But one of those things for me, when I heard something along those lines, was just I'm going to go to heaven when I die. Guys, if the atonement is just limited to where we go when we die, I am sorry. This life sucks. It just does. Excuse my French. I know that some of our older people in the room, that's a bad word. My dad would be very upset with me. This life stinks. So, for us, if the atonement is just limited to hey, when I die, I get to go to heaven or hell. And if I believe in Jesus, I'm going to heaven. If that's what it's all about, if that's what the atonement is all about, and that's what is taught so often, I'm sorry, we just have to acknowledge that this life just really stinks. Because it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or a non-Christian, everybody goes through stuff. Everybody goes through stuff. Some people are living in hell right now. And so it's just one of those things where we got to be able to take a step back and acknowledge that when we say that we have this power in God, we're not talking about something that we get to look forward to when we die. We're not talking about something that we get to look forward to when everything's all said and done. It's no, there's something that is happening right here, right now. That's why Jesus consistently brought the message, not only of future glory, but that the kingdom was present in the midst of the people that he was talking to even before the crucifixion actually happened. That's mind-blowing. Before he ever died, before he ever rose again, he was telling people, hey, the kingdom is in your midst. The kingdom is in your midst. The kingdom is in your midst. It's here. It's right now. Now, would he point to the eschaton? Would he point to the end? Yeah, he would. But he seemed to be, with the vast majority of his teaching, far more concerned with what is happening right here, right now, and the healing and the power and the things that he wants to bring us today than he was about the things that happen when we die, just strictly based on his teaching and how much of his teaching we see. For example, I think in one of his Gospels, 30% of his teaching is just about money and generosity and how we shouldn't be slaves to money. We're going to get into money and some of the things about that before too long, too. And that's going to be an interesting conversation. So all we see so far in this passage, two things. Our victory, our power, it comes from God. So this is not a battle that we're fighting alone. And second thing, we have an enemy. Now, this stuff right here, this is going to get fleshed out in the coming weeks. It's going to get fleshed out in the coming weeks in a really deep way. But what are we talking about when we say the rulers, the authorities, the powers of the dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms and things like that? There's all sorts of pen that has been taken to paper about that kind of stuff. And there's going to be some areas where we may have to agree to disagree on some things, but we're going to try to bring the best of it that we can bring to the table here. But yeah, there is a spiritual force that seems to have a mind, that seems to be rational, that we are battling against. And then you get into the really popular passage, therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you've done everything to stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Now notice the warfare language here, but also notice that the vast majority of what he's talking about as we talk about spiritual warfare there is defensive tools with only one offensive tool, which should tell us that we are going to be under attack often, right? Like if it was just like if Paul just mentioned like a shield, like, hey, here's your shield or something like that. But then he goes on to list all these other defensive type weapons or defensive type tools that we have in our armor. And I think that we should know, like, yeah, like the reason for that is because we are under attack, and it is probably happening maybe even in this room right now. Who knows? So these are the four things that we see in this passage. I already told you about, God is our power. We have the spiritual enemy. We are in a spiritual war. And we have unique weapons and tools for the battle. Now, we went into those tools in a lot of depth with our spiritual formation class. If you want some of those resources, I can give those to you. We're going to kind of highlight those throughout the series, some of those tools, because what is the Christian faith without the spiritual disciplines? Like those are the means by which we grow in concert with the Holy Spirit's guidance. And so for us, we're going to be talking about these throughout, but that's what we see in this passage. And then this other passage, we get into something interesting. It says, for though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ. Now, this passage right here is important to help us see that we have a God who's for us, we have an enemy who's against us, we are in a battle, and there's things that we need to be utilizing in this battle. The next passage that we just looked at, there's some really good stuff here, and this is going to come up frequently throughout our time on Wednesday nights, but the biggest thing that is the takeaway for me from this passage is that it tells us the battlefield that the battle is happening on. Now, if there was like a battle happening today, modern day, it would be, probably over, the battle itself would be over territory or resources or some offense that was given or something along those lines. But it's going to happen in a specific place and for a specific thing. Like that's the point, right? When we start talking about spiritual warfare, where is the battle taking place? It's taking place in our mind. The battle of spiritual warfare is a battle where the battlefield is our mind, and it's going after something. And so let's talk about that just for a second. All right, let's talk about the differences here between the will, the mind, and the brain. The will, the mind, and the brain. We'll start with the mind. We're going to start with the will. Dallas Willard. One of my favorite authors. If you've never read anything from Dallas Willard or listened to Dallas Willard or something like that, by all means, you need to do it. He's dead, so he finished the race, and he did a good job. So he's one of those guys that we can kind of look to and be like, yeah, he finished. All right. Dallas Willard was a philosopher who did a lot of work on spiritual formation, and he did a lot of work at trying to help people understand the difference between the will, the mind, the heart, so on and so forth. And what he said about the will is that it is the executive center of the self. The will is the executive center of the self. What does that mean? It's the decision maker. It's the decision maker. Like when we say that we are activating our will, what we are saying is that we are now ready to make a decision. And that there is something in us, in us being built in the image of God, there's something in us and about us that God put there so that when it comes time to make a decision, we would be able to do that. The will. Then you go to the mind. The mind is the place where we process emotions and thoughts. The place where we process emotions and thoughts. You can't make a decision. Well, actually you can. We'll talk about that too. It's hard to make a decision without first processing your emotions and your thoughts that go into that decision. Now, if you make the same decision on a specific decision, if you make the same move with your will on a specific question time and time and time again, you will train your will to act. And that's why there's some times where we're just like, why did I just do what I just did? You know, like that was weird. I was like, well, you trained yourself, you know, that's why that happened. You trained your will to act a certain kind of way. That's why, that is why the whole like stubbing your toe and like a cuss word comes out, like that's why it's a little bit embarrassing, right? Rarely do we find somebody who just never uses bad language in their vernacular, stub their toe and be like, oh, bad word, you know, like insert whatever your favorite bad word is. Like very rarely will we see that happen. And that's why, you know, when somebody's like, oh yeah, like I stubbed my toe the other day and I cussed, I was like, well yeah, probably because in some way, it's part of your vernacular. Or you're filling your mind with that word. And like you're not just coming up with that instantaneously because you stubbed your toe. Like that's not how the will works. You can train the will through repetition, through what you put in your mind, through what you put in your body, through what you do and how you enact the will. You can train the will to just do stuff on command. That's a little bit scary. Like it makes us think sometimes like, turds. So that means that the other day when like I really wasn't thinking about this thing that I did and I felt like I shouldn't feel that guilty about it, like maybe I have kind of trained myself to do this thing or whatever the case may be. But the mind is that place where we process those emotions and those thoughts that lead us to an act of the will. And then we get to the brain, and the brain is just the embodied vessel of the mind. All right, it's the embodied vessel of the mind. Your mind, because you are a human and you live in a human body, your mind must operate using the brain. But one day, the brain will be buried in the dirt. It is an organ. The mind will go on. The will go on. And when your brain is buried, it's done. Like its job, its task, the task of your body, the task of your brain will be done at that point in time. And that's why what we allow into our mind is incredibly important. Why? Because we know from all sorts of neuroscience and psychology and anthropology and things like that, the brain is very moldable. And it learns new habits and it learns new things and stuff like that. And so sometimes we see our mind using the brain to enact the will, but other times you're going to see the brain just doing what it's been trained to do. Other times you're going to see the brain just doing what it's kind of been molded and shaped and all those things like that. And that can be where life gets really interesting as well also. And so you have these three things, the will, the mind, and the brain. And the enemy seems to be battling in our mind, utilizing our brain so that he can access our will. Battling in our mind, utilizing our brain so that he can access our will. He wants your will not to be surrendered to Jesus Christ so that it can be surrendered to the world, to the flesh, and to the devil. That's what he wants. And so like the battlefield for it, it's the battlefield of the mind. And what is he fighting for? He wants your will. He wants it subjected to whatever his will is for you rather than what the Lord's will is for you. Let's just stop right there just for a second because that's philosophical and I don't even know if I understand it. So do you have any questions, thoughts, or anything like that? Yes, sir.
Can I give an example of that?
I would love that.
So, and I'm going to be a little bit generic.
Okay.
There, but so you
Dadgummit, if you're about to say what I think you're about to say, you're the worst. Oh, you're the worst.
So about a little over 2 years ago,
Yes.
we were on a youth trip, and the day, so talking to the males, the night that we had just the guys alone.
Oh, this is a different story. Sorry. Okay.
We were talking to them about, that was the day we were sharing the gospel. And they had a tough time, and they were all struggling. And as we started talking with them, there were 17, 18 youth there. Every single male except for one, including staff, had an inappropriate sexual dream the night before, sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
That's not coincidence. That can't be coincidence.
Yeah.
Every single one of them woke up feeling dirty, gross, like they didn't deserve, that they had done something wrong. And the one person who hadn't had that dream actually had a more traumatic dream about something from his youth that was related to something different.
Yeah.
So the idea of battling in the mind with something that affected, how we woke up feeling physically, emotionally, and how people felt that day going about the pre-planned day of sharing the gospel, that's a battlefield.
That's a really good anecdote, and I appreciate you. I had forgot about that. That's a really powerful story. I remember coming up to the setting when y'all were all hashing that out, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. It was really good. The devil utilizing the brain, this bodily organ, so that he can wage a war in the mind, so that he can gain control over the will in whatever capacity he was trying. That is a fantastic anecdote. Good. What else do we got? Anything else before we move on? Any questions, comments, thoughts, pushback? I'm about to call on somebody, and you're just going to have to come up with something on the spot. And those are when some of the most classic things happen.
I think one thing that kind of stood out to me in my, like, reading books and listening to podcasts
Yeah.
and stuff, and I don't know why I've never thought of this, the demons have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just thought they just were there whenever I was born, and so they just have this limited amount of time to figure me out, but they've been figuring humankind out for years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years. So it's nothing to them. We're not thinking anything any different than people did 2,000 years ago.
Take somebody who's been studying psychology for 4,000 years, 6,000 years, and now you have a pretty decent understanding of the kind of the demonic realm. Excuse me. Anything else before we kind of move on? All right, so I just want you guys to get in the fight. Like that, like I said, like that's the goal tonight. Is very, very simple. Wherever you're at, whatever category you put yourself in, get into the fight. Understand that there is a real battle. There's real tools in that battle. We have a real God who is for us. He is not against us, and all that good stuff like that. And so for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be doing something that some of you may absolutely love and adore, and some of you may hate, okay? We're just going to try our best. You know what? I'm not going to say that just yet. We're going to play a little game. Let's do this. All right, everybody pull out your phone or something to write with. All right, you need something that you can write with. I almost messed up. Okay, we're going to do an activity. Some of you have done this with me before. Some of you have not. So I'm going to tell you the rules of this activity. And just know that the first rule of the activity is you have to obey the rules of the activity. Okay? All right. So here you go. I'm going to read them for you. You have to obey all the rules and instructions perfectly. You cannot hedge on any of the rules. Y'all get with me on that? You've got to obey them perfectly. Second rule, you have to be brutally honest. Third rule, you can use no more than 3 words in a phrase or a thought that you're writing down, and you can use up to 3 of these phrases or thoughts. Does that make sense? So you should have no more than 9 words for each question that I ask you. Everybody with me? You understand what I'm saying? So if your response is a 1-word response, fantastic. You can have 3 one-word responses, or a 1-word response, a 2-word response, a 3-word response, but you can't have a 4-word response. All right, we got it? Next thing, you have to write down the first thing that comes to your mind. Now remember what our first rule is. All right, the first rule is you have to obey the rules perfectly. Thank you. So you have to write down the first thing that comes to your mind. If you think of something that comes to your mind and you're just like, oh, I don't like that, you broke the rule. All right, you got to write down the first thing that comes to your mind. You're not going to share it with everybody, don't worry. I may ask you very, very general terms like what it is, but I'm not going to out anybody or anything like that. So you have got to write down the first thing that comes into your mind. If you start thinking about that thing, you've broken the rule. All right, it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Write that thing down. All right, everybody got me on that? Okay. This is how this is going to work. I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to give it to you in this progression where I'm going to list different people that I want you to answer the question for, okay? Here is the question. When I say go, I want you to write out what you think this person thinks of you or how they feel about you. Okay? What they think of you or how they feel about you, how they interact with you. You can do any of those things right there. All right? The first one's going to be nice and simple one. All right? Y'all ready for this? So I'm going to say, when I say go, I'm going to say the individual's name or title, and you just got to write down first thing that comes to your mind about what you think that individual thinks about you, how they feel about you, whatever you want to do, but you only got a maximum of 3 words, but you can put 3 different phrases if you would like. Is that all complicated enough? Yeah.
Can't go over 9 words
Can't go over 9 words.
in answering these 3 questions.
It's not 3 questions, it's just 1 question, but you can answer it 3 different times. That's all right. We'll figure it out as we go. Let's just practice one time. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, your mom. I'm not making fun of your mom. I'm just saying, like you've already failed. Your first thought probably was like, Kobe's a jerk.
What we think of them,
What you think
they think of us.
they think of you,
Okay.
or how they act towards you, or how that relationship looks. You can do any of those things. It's just got to be that first thing that comes to mind.
And it's just 3 words.
Yep. No more than 3 words. Up to 3 words, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't do that one. Just trying to make it.
I got 2.
Nice. See, Dwayne spared himself a word. If somebody would like to use one of his words, you can't. You can sell it. Okay. All right, everybody got it? All right, cool. So here's the only thing I'm going to ask as we proceed, okay? Was your phrase or whatever, was it positive or negative, okay? So if it was positive, I want you to raise your hand. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Here we go. Next person. Are you ready? We're going 3, 2, 1. Your dad. All right, everybody got it? Just got to be the first thing. Pow. If you're writing down your second thought, you're breaking the first rule. First rule of Fight Club. Somebody say it. Go ahead. Thank you. Second rule. Kim, do you know the second rule of Fight Club? It was also that you can't talk about Fight Club. But anyways, we don't watch rated R movies, so, I had to rely on you for that. I figured out of everybody in it. Kim's the one. Do what?
You're on that PureFlix.
PureFlix. Angel Studios, All right. So, if whatever you wrote down was positive, why don't you raise your hand? All right. That has room. Okay. All right. Here we go. Last one. 3, 2, 1. God. I saved it from the worst of the fall. I have been without a phone case for about 3 years now. No cracks.
Wow.
No cracks. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Do what?
Kim's demon's gonna come for us.
Oh, man. Dang it. Okay.
That's what made it fall.
Here we go. I'm not going to tell you the stats that I usually get, but I have tried this in a lot of different scenarios, and I've always had the same result. So we'll see if we have a drill buster today. Okay. If your phrase was something that would be like, so when I say positive, it's like, hey, I want this. Like I'm very pleased with the phrase. Like this is a good thing. So like, you understand what I mean when I say positive. So if your phrase was positive, raise your hand. Close. Oh man, actually we are about statistically where we usually are. Okay, you can put your hands down. So typically here is what I find when I do that exercise. We probably were about 60-40 right there. It's usually about 50-50. It's usually about 50-50, and I've done it in quite a few different spaces. In fact, I'm going to be doing it in a church in Georgetown this weekend, and so we'll see if they bust the drills there. So think about this just for a second, all right? Because this is going to explain to you why we're going to do what we're going to do for the next 4 weeks, after tonight. If your phrase that you're looking at right there in your phone or on your piece of paper, if it is positive, good. What are the temptations that 60% of the room may have in their life? There's really only one, potentially, is that there's the potential that you might be a little soft on sin. That's one of the primary, like if your phrase was positive, there's the potential, and I'm not saying that that's you, I'm not trying to put any bad mojo on anybody in the room, I'm just saying there's the potential that, like one of the temptations that may come from that would be that you might be a little bit soft on sin. Why? Because you might, when you're considering the character of God, you might possibly lean God is the Lamb, and the Lamb was slain, and the Lamb is not on the throne necessarily. He's just, he's just pouring out his blood for me type thing. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes those people are a little bit more free with their sin and not quite as, conviction-based when it comes to kind of dealing with their sin. Now, if you did not raise your hand and you have something that you would consider to be negative, then what temptation might you be facing right now? And again, it's close to half of the room, probably about 40%. What temptation might you be facing? Well, it's the same temptation that I face most days of my life, right? Like I have a lion complex in me. In fact, my wife, even just this week, as I was telling her about a conversation I had, she just stopped and she's like, Kobe, you're a very intense person. And I was like, Like, you got anything else to add to that? We just stopping there? Like, where are we going with this? But, I've always kind of had this view of God, like, man, he's the lion. And if he's the lion, then there is a real chance that if I cross the line here, he's going to eat me. Like, this is the problem with what is going on with sin and things like that. And so there might be a lot of shame. There might be a lot of guilt. There might be some frustration if you did not raise your hand with something positive. So those are like some of the temptations that you might have if you didn't raise your hand. Those are some of the temptations that you might have if you did raise your hand. And the reason that I bring those things up, is really, really simple, okay? We, by the end of 4 weeks, want to be able to express that phrase in 3 little words. And we're going to talk about those 4 weeks from now, but we're going to have some build up to it. But the Apostle John had 4 phrases that he used to describe God that are all 3 words long, and they are described in God is statements. Now, if you were part of our formation class, we talked about this. We took the first 5 minutes of every formation class and talked about this briefly. But now I want us to take the deep dive into what those 4 statements mean as it pertains to who we are as people, who God is as God, and how it interacts with spiritual warfare. Because surprisingly, all 4 of the statements are huge when it comes to spiritual warfare. In fact, you cannot fight spiritual warfare without a proper understanding and a proper grounding in the 4 statements that we're going to be talking about, okay? So that's what the next 4 weeks are going to look like. So if you kind of came and you're just like, man, I'm ready to jump into the demon stuff, like, hey, that's coming about week 6, 7, stuff like that. So sorry. But we need to make sure that we've got a foundation, because if Ephesians chapter 6 is to be believed and God is our power, then we got to make sure that we know who God is. And as we know who God is, that it actually makes it from our head into our heart. Everybody with me on that? Okay. Fantastic. Next week, we are starting with our first God is statement, and that is God is spirit. God is spirit. So if you want to do some advanced study on that, you're more than welcome to, but we will be tying that in to what that means for spiritual warfare, and I think that you will get a lot out of it, okay? I have papers, and they are in my office. Will y'all let me go grab them real quick? So on these papers, I have some suggested reading again, but I also every week will have like 3 exercises that you can pick from. If you want to get the most out of this time, you need to pick one of those and do it, okay? Now, if you don't and you come back next week, I'm not even going to ask, hey, who did their homework? Because I've realized in the formation class, that gets nowhere. But you can show up and you can pretend like you did it and nobody's going to ask. However, I just want you to know that if you want to get the most out of it, you need to like pick one of them and practice it and just kind of do it for, I think like most of them this week will take you a grand total of like 30 minutes, like total for the whole week. So let me go grab those really quickly. I apologize. Ricky, say like a really long prayer or something.